In the past year, like Hong Kong has experienced lots of unprecedented shocks, like the social unrest in 2019, followed by the economic recess that's caused by the coronavirus. Could you please brief us on the foreign investment situation in Hong Kong over the past year and how does it compare to the year of 2019?
Before I talk about Hong Kong, maybe I can give you a bit of the global context in terms of what COVID-19 has done for foreign direct investment flows. They've actually dropped in 2020 by about 42%. Against that backdrop, if we look at Hong Kong, we've not fared, in my opinion, too badly. I think the biggest issue that has impacted investment has been the travel restrictions all around the world because of COVID. So that's a real impediment to people who need to cross borders to both set up their business and then run their business. The good news is we see robust interest in Hong Kong. At Invest Hong Kong, we've got offices all around the world, and we still see plenty of interest in Hong Kong as an investment destination. In terms of some of the data about the overall environment in Hong Kong last year, at Invest Hong Kong, we do an annual survey which looks at the number of international and mainland companies in the city. And if we look at 2019 and 2020, the total number of companies was more or less the same, just over 9,000 companies. So just a marginal drop in the number of companies. If we look at the source countries for that investment, the mainland is the number one source, followed by Japan, the US, the UK, and Singapore. We also do a survey that looks at the startup ecosystem in Hong Kong. And one of the unique things about our startup ecosystem is it's very international in nature. Over a quarter of all startups have got international co-founders. And that goes to the very international nature of the city. What we saw last year was an increase in the number of startups despite the challenging economic conditions. We did see a slight drop in the number of employees, but what is great is that entrepreneurs are responding to some of the challenges that we see arising from economic conditions. But challenges also mean opportunities. So COVID has obviously created lots of opportunities in healthcare and life sciences, for instance, and in technology solutions to disinfect premises. So that goes to robotics and a whole number of other areas. So overall, I think I would say we had a robust environment in 2020, but a very challenging business environment at the individual company level.
It's been over half a year since the national security law in Hong Kong came into effect, and some say that some are worried that a large amount of capital might have fled Hong Kong. And what's your comment on this?
Well, I think the short answer to that is there seems to be no evidence, data-based evidence, of any capital outflow from Hong Kong. So I think that's a myth. I think if you look at the data that the Hong Kong Monetary Authority publishes, it is very clear that we haven't seen an exodus of capital. In terms of the day-to-day work that we do at Invest Hong Kong with companies, we too haven't seen an exodus of companies. We have seen a number of companies say that they're relocating some staff, a handful of companies closing down. But every year, in good years, in bad years, companies come to Hong Kong, some companies close. And it's for commercial reasons that they take these decisions. I personally think that some observers in the market are attaching normal corporate decisions to the national security law, and I don't think that's really the case.
In your view, do do you notice other changes in Hong Kong after the enforcement of national security law?
Sure, well I think the most obvious manifestation is on the streets. Obviously we've seen law and order and social stability return. And for the businesses operating in Hong Kong, that's really important. Companies don't want disruption to their day-to-day operations. So I think from that point of view, it's a positive. Again, I talk to lots of different companies. And like any change in a law or regulation, companies want to understand what NSL means. But I think the reality is the substance of the national security law targets 4 areas, as you know. Those are not areas that commercial businesses will be involved in. So actually from a corporate point of view, again, I don't think this is a big concern. And I come back to the point about the stability that it's restored within society, provides the foundations for companies to begin to recover from the impact of the social unrest and then the double whammy of COVID.
As for COVID-19, how much influence has it brought on Hong Kong, like as an investment destination? Like, can you give us some figures and like more details on it?
COVID-19 without doubt has had an impact on new investment. Earlier on I mentioned to you that last year we completed 317 projects compared to roughly 500 in 2019. And the reason for that drop was because of the travel restrictions globally arising from COVID-19. When you're setting up a company, some of the really practical things require you to be in Hong Kong, opening a bank account, signing a lease, hiring people and so forth. So COVID has been a big impediment there. But of course we've got lots of existing international and mainland investment in Hong Kong, and there it's more of a mixed picture. Some sectors have been very hard hit, companies in retail, in hospitality, in food and drink, tourism, obviously have been severely impacted. But then if we look at other sectors, they've been quite robust. If we look at financial and professional services, on the back of the very strong performance of the equity capital markets in Hong Kong, the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, they have had quite a buoyant time. So like any crisis, some companies find new opportunities, other companies find things quite tough. Hopefully we're beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel with vaccines being rolled out. Hopefully things throughout 2021 will begin to resume more normal service.
As we know, like the decision on national security law was made in the 2 sessions, namely the MPC and CPCC in Beijing last year around late May. And this year's 2 sessions are scheduled like in around early March. And can I ask you what expectations, or do you foresee any decisions coming out this year that's going to favor Hong Kong or the broader Greater Bay Area?
Yeah, I probably am not best placed to forecast what will come out of Lianhui, but I am sure we will see policies and encouragement around economic development across the whole of the country, and that will include Hong Kong. And you mentioned the Greater Bay Area, which in my opinion is probably the most exciting economic development initiative on the planet today. I think it's really exciting. To the companies I talk to all around the world, it captures their imagination in a way that really is quite amazing. And it's for good reason. Obviously the existing ingredients in GBA are very strong. the financial services prowess of Hong Kong, the innovation agenda in Hong Kong, the scale of innovation and production capacity, and incredibly efficient value chains within Guangdong. And you combine that together with this overall framework to see GBA emerge as a leading global cluster for innovation. It is something that really grabs people's attention. It's more or less the 10th or 11th largest economy in the world today. If we look 10 years ahead, it could be more or less the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world. Through dots, we connect.